economy, a driving force for trade and an engine of investment, is heading into uncharted economic waters at a time when it's juggling a tariff war, fiscal tightening, deleveraging, economic fatigue, and yet trade surpluses. So what is in store for the economy before 2019? How will it affect the Chinese real estate sector? And what is the health of the Chinese market anyway? To discuss these issues and more, I'm happy to be joined in the studio by Vincent Mo, Board Chairman and CEO of Fang.com. And that is our topic. This is Dialogue. I'm Li Xiuyuan. But before we start, let's take a look at this.
Amid complex economic changes in and outside China, the top leadership held a meeting on the country's economic policy for the second half of the year. General Secretary of the Central Committee of the Communist Party of China, Xi Jinping, presided over the meeting. They came to a decision that China will continue seeking progress while maintaining stability in its economic development. The Chinese economy saw steady growth in the first half of 2018. 6 major tasks were addressed to tackle internal and external challenges. First, the country will continue to implement a proactive fiscal policy and prudent monetary policy. Fiscal policy should play a bigger role in expanding domestic demand and structural adjustments. China will control monetary supply and keep liquidity at a reasonable level. The country will continue to protect the legitimate rights of foreign-funded companies in China. Second, deepening supply-side structural reforms continues to be a focus. To cultivate new growth drivers, intensified efforts will be made in improving infrastructure and innovation capabilities. The government will also try to further lower the cost for companies and revitalize the country's vast rural areas. Third, the meeting says it will work to diffuse any financial risk to better help the development of the real economy. Fourth, the meeting reiterated the importance of deepening the reform and opening up policy and further implementation of the Belt and Road Initiative. Fifth, the leadership called for a continuous firm curb of home prices and the establishment of a long-term mechanism to ensure the stable and healthy development of the property market. Finally, the meeting pledged to effectively improve people's lives and ensure social stability by adding more jobs, increasing people's salaries, and improving education and social security.
Okay, Mr. Mo, let's talk about this. The goal of China's macroeconomic regulation and control is to keep the economy stable while boosting domestic demand and also bolstering the real economy support, and that is according to the Chinese premier. How does China plan to boost its domestic demand, though?
I think China's economy has been experiencing some fundamental changes in the past several years. China is more relying on domestic consumption to boost China's general economy. So that is the direction from now on into the future, especially during the trade war with the U.S. side. So I think the government, they have different policies to do this. And most recently, the Politburo Standing Committee, they have the meeting recently to have some specific policies or directions of the policies out. One way it's really to support those small and middle-sized companies and for them to get funding easier. And also they are going to plan to have a tax, deduct or tax cut for those small and the middle-sized companies. So that's one of the policies. And the other policy, including the credit losing from the central bank. So they will be easier to get money from different sources. And before that, we can see 2 months ago, it's very tight. The credit is tightening up. But now with the changing environment globally, I think the second policy is really for the central bank or our financial ministry to have a better and easier policy for them to get funding.
Yeah, and China is now wishing to refrain from another wave of strong stimulus policies and instead favoring a combination of fiscal and financial policies. Why do you think we're seeing such a shift? What do you think happened back there, back behind the door for the policymakers?
I think fiscal policy, especially financial policy, monetary policies, they are more market-oriented, policies, comparing to those administrative stimulus policies. I think that's the right thing to do going forward, because China's economy has been developing very fast in the past 30 years, and based on many different policies. I think most of them are administrative, stimulus policies, especially in the past 2 cycles of the business cycles during the in the 2010 period during the financial crisis of the world. So China used a lot of stimulus policies. But in the past 2-3 years, I've been seeing Chinese government, and they have been using more and more market-oriented policies, including fiscal policy and financial monetary policies to do that. I think that's the right thing to do for the longer future or stable development of China's general economy.
What about the stock market? I mean, it has tumbled in the first half. How is it going to perform in the second half of the year?
Well, it's a complicated issue. It's troubling a lot of people, I think, from the central government to individual investors who have been seeing in the past 2 weeks or past 1 month, the stock price dipped a lot. I think it's mainly because of the trade conflict or trade war between U.S. and China. So that's the main reason, and that's the fundamental. But because of that, it affects people or the investors' confidence in the general economy and also in the stock market. But I believe China's fundamental, the economic fundamental, is still there, and I also believe that our smart government, they will have a way to get everybody out.
Any systematic risks that we should be watching out for, though?
Definitely, I think the trade war and the dip of the stock market, they are high-risk things. And they may trigger a lot of other things which could fundamentally affect our general economy. We need to be very, very careful, especially the financial problems which may occur in the future. I've heard there are, the central government has been putting different policies there to make sure the stock market to be relatively stable, and to make sure those leveraged who have a high leverage by using stocks will not be affected immediately, even though the stock price keeps going down. So I think definitely there should be some policies to make sure we can get over this period of I think it's not a normal, fluctuation of the market.
Yeah, and you mentioned the tax cuts a little earlier. Now the government will introduce more policies to cut taxes. A lot of more companies are set to benefit from it. Do you think, though, this is a focus on the Made in China 2025 policy? What have you heard from your sources?
I think definitely it's related, and cutting tax, and which is part of the fiscal policies, and lending money easier to the real economy. It's another way of boosting the economy. These 2 things, they're all fundamentals to the general economy, and definitely this is going to affect the 2020, 2025 policies for sure.
Now, the country also will step up efforts to make sure the delivery of state financing guarantee fund goes well, which sets aside loans of 140 billion yuan for about 150,000 small and micro firms each year. What does this tell us about the environment for investment and business and, the health status of small and micro business here in China?
I think micro business, those small and middle-sized companies, they are really a major force of our general economy, especially for employment. Employment is the key of everything. As long as people are employed, they are paid, and our economy will be stable, and people will be somehow satisfied with the status quo. So I think the special fund to support small and middle-sized companies is definitely a good policy, especially during this period of time. I think it's going to be effective, and it's going to stabilize the economy.
Yeah, on a related subject, Beijing will also phase out the zombie companies in order to free out their underutilized funding and also crack down on illegal financial institutions. But talk to us more about these zombie companies. Why are they there in the first place? What has generated their creation?
Well, I've heard about stories, and recently, and the government is trying to manage these zombie companies. I think there are two categories of zombie companies. One category are those companies which are market-oriented, and they are small and middle-sized companies. They're just their efficiency is low and their productivity is low, and those companies, they are going to be, because of competition, they're going to get out of the market or be kicked out of the market. So those companies, I think, they need to be kicked out so that the whole economy can be upgraded to a better quality economy or better quality companies. Another category of zombie companies belongs to the state-owned or somehow state-owned companies because of the state support or the government support. They're just staying there, but actually they are not a high-quality economy, part of the economy. So those companies are also not suitable to sustain or to go
But
on.
is this easier said than done? Because a lot of these companies are interlocked with other companies in the economy. Ruling them out will have cascading impacts.
You're right. That's well, it's easier to say we're going to kill all the zombie companies, but in doing that, like the employment, the layoff, all of this social issues may jump up or come up. So those things or those problems may make things more complicated. So that's why the government is trying to support and to move forward with this movement.
Yeah, and the trade war. Let's talk about this. A lot of analysts expect the trade war between U.S. and China will take a toll on China's economy in the second half. Do you agree with this?
I think that's for sure, and for the second half of this year, and I think going forward for 2019, 2020, it will not be an easy thing to handle or to forget. So it's definitely going to impact our general economy going forward in the coming probably 2-3 years for sure. So we need to be prepared, and we need to have policies there to be ready to handle whatever is going to happen, and we need to be ready for the worst case, which may happen. But that said, China is a big country, and China's economy is huge. It's the second biggest economy in the whole world, and China has a huge domestic demand, and its domestic economy is big enough. So China can sustain or can develop on its own going forward. So for that part, as long as we handle well, I think we're fine.
A lot of people worry that they might lose their job as a result of the trade war. Do you think the government has the right tool, right measures in place to keep the job market steady?
I think that's definitely one of the tough issues on the top list of the government's policies. Employment, and which directly affects people's living. So that's what the government cares the most. The physical policies, the financial or monetary policies we mentioned, are those policies trying to make sure the bad things may not happen, or we can make it smoother going forward.
And deleveraging, why is this being prioritized for the country's economy at this moment?
And I think make sure we're not going to experience a big fluctuation from all parts of the economy, stock market, the lending system, and the lending borrow system, and also the tax system. All of these things together, which may be effective, and we cannot expect. We are not going to expect one policy or two policies are going to make sure everything's right. I think we need to systematically think about it.
All right, stay with me. We're going to talk about China's real estate market when we come back. We'll see you soon. All right, welcome back to Dialogue. So, Mr. Mo, why are the property controls targeting first and second tier cities, first of all?
Well, it's very obvious. In the past 2-3 years, the property prices in the big cities like Beijing, Shanghai, Shenzhen, Guangdong, all of these big cities has been experiencing a high rise or hike. It's a jump, really, not only a increase. So that's the biggest challenge to everything. So the government targeting those fourth tier and including provincial second tier cities, that's for sure.
The authorities also vow to speed up the establishment of a long-term mechanism for the real estate sector. How is this long-term mechanism going to look like? What does it do? What are the likely results we're going to see?
Well, we have been talking about this for a long time. And, China's real estate market is a regulated market for a long time. So regulated market, which is mostly the short-term policies. We have been experiencing every other 5 years. So we are going to have a new round of policies. So we have been talking, and the government has been talking about long-term policies and has been debating, discussing different proposals for 10 years.
10 years?
Yeah,
wow.
I think the long-term policy, we should have long-term policies there, like the land policy, how much or how many the government can has the supply of land there. That's important. And also the monetary policy and the mortgage system, the mortgage rate, whether it should be supported by the government in some way. I think it should, because it's a social living issue. Property tax, that's something we have been talking many times, including here. I think this at least my third time talking about tax here in this studio. So there are a bunch of these so-called long-term policies, and I believe, including the property tax. Last time when I was here, I think it's going to be happening in probably 5 years or so, and today I would say probably it's going to happen in 3 years.
Why is happening earlier than expected?
Because from the top government and to the market, the price needs to be controlled. We don't want to see the price, going up very fast. It's hurting the property market. It's also hurting the general economy. So I believe property tax could happen in 3 years.
But what were the major stumbling blocks? Why was it taking so long to finalize this long-term mechanism?
Well. Although we're talking about long-term policies, but long-term policies is also relative. It's not something, there is no absolute long-term policies there which we just make and it's going to be effective. Because if we don't have the environment, we don't have a good condition there, and even the long-term policies are not going to be effective. So we need to be careful. When we were discussing about this, one of my points is that we are going to look into the long-term policies, but do we have the condition, do we have the environment for those long-term policies to be effective? So we need to combine, I think, to regulate the property market. We need short-term policies, and at the same time we also need long-term policies together. This market may be under control.
Now, housing payments, frankly speaking, they're eating up a growing chunk of people's income. Is this fair?
Yes and no. And yes, if you go to any country, and house payment, mortgage payment, it's going to take you, 20, 30 years to pay off everything. And when you're 50 or something, and then you are free, free of the mortgage. And in China, in our market, it's similar. So this is, I say, it's yes. And on the other hand, because our price, the property price is so high, and comparatively our income or disposable income is not comparatively high enough, so it's taking our Chinese citizens a bigger part of our income to pay the mortgage. So in analyzing this, I would say, it is tough for our, for our citizens.
Yeah, as you said, being a homeowner means a lot to Chinese people. This is in our culture. Before many of them, paying those mortgages will leave them very little disposable income. This is a reality, yet people are still determined to become homeowners. But, this is not a healthy model. It's not good for a family unit. It's driving up inequality in the society. Will there be any solutions for this, though?
Well, it's a complicated and systematic issue. One way, for us, we don't have much, many alternatives to invest our money. And inflation is something people are afraid of. So property market, it looks like properties are the only thing, everybody can do to invest. So that's, it relates to the financial market. Our financial market is not mature enough. We don't have many investment vehicles there for us to invest. On the other hand, the price of properties, the property price has been keep on going up. So people are getting, at least on the paper, returns from investing into properties. So investing or buying property becomes a very attractive thing to do. So together we are seeing people, they are continuously investing into the property market. It's not right for the general economy with the property market. I think a balanced investment may be better for the future of us.
And the socioeconomic challenges brought by this. There's already a deeply rooted view in China that men without its own home is unfit to marry. Already men, of marrying age here in China is outnumbering women. So the understanding that I mentioned before is only worsening it. Isn't it?
That's why I said it's not good for the social, balance. We need, we need those men and women, and they can be matched, and which is going to make the social, more stable. And if a man has to have a property as a precondition to be married, we're going to see different things will happen. It's not a real love or real living together going forward. If in the future things change and there is not a fundamental for the marriage, it's because of the properties. It's a dangerous thing. It's not a good thing for the social development.
What about supportive policy? Will that work? Because people are already talking about this. For example, in Beijing, well, this is one of the cities that home prices are most inflated, one of the most inflated. If a Beijing-born man's parent own a house or a condo, they often pass it on to their son when he gets married. But for those who move to the capital city from elsewhere, they must buy one for themselves, and they will have to do everything they can to get that down payment ready, often have to borrow from their relatives. So they are asking, shouldn't there be supportive policy for couples like them, to subsidize them in order, rather than putting them into an environment that's increasing their debt burden? Is that even possible?
I think there's a need for that. It's a factual need for support from the social government. And secondarily, we have those policies. We have the government is supporting renter. If you rent, the government can subsidize in one way, and also your rental payment can be deducted from your tax income. So for the renter, for the transaction market, buy and sell. If you're buying the first apartment or a house, definitely apartment, and you can have a higher leverage, you can borrow more money from the banks. So we do have those policies there. Still, it's not enough. The price is comparatively too high comparing to the young people's income. So that is the challenge.
Yeah, and how does it compare with other countries? I mean, you touched upon it a little earlier, but we have some numbers. Outstanding household debt stood at 40.5 trillion yuan at the end of 2017, and loans averaging 20 years here in the country. The principal pay last year likely totaled amount 2 trillion yuan. The interest rate averaged 5.3% in December. Is that large in, relative comparison to other nations?
Well, 5.35, it's relatively high, I would say, compared to U.S. market, which I know. On the other hand, I think, we actually borrow less than the U.S. couples or U.S. citizens in buying properties. Overall, I think national level or on average, I think 50% is leveraged domestically. But in the U.S., probably 70% is leveraged. So the U.S. people, they intend to borrow more money, and Chinese citizens, they are trying to pay more money. So that's the difference. But going forward, I think U.S. market is more mature, and our market is more fractured in the early stage. It depends on the back to the price of the properties.
Yeah, and the widening income gap, the rising property prices are widening that gap between China's rich and poor. As wealthy residents of Beijing or Shanghai who own multiple properties, they're benefiting from the price hikes. Is there a solution, though?
Not now.
Not
now. We have, the government has noticed the academics has also noticed this gap, between those who have properties and those who do not. So sometimes we joke the property is creating two classes. One is those people with properties, and the other one is those people without properties. So it is becoming a social issue. I believe the government and the academics, they're discussing this. They're trying to do, from different angles to handle this.
I understand the government is very determined to keep the property prices down in the second half of the year. What kind of measures are we expected to see?
We have seen different policies from different levels of governments in China. And the central government, the tune is very tough. Even if the economy is under pressure, but the property market, the tune is really, we cannot let the price go up. So, of course, we are not there talking about go down, but at least we cannot let the price go up. That the tune is very clear. And in different cities, we have seen dozens and policies out which are limiting people to buy. If you have one or two properties already, you cannot buy anymore, or you have to pay everything in cash. So those things, those policies together, I think is useful and will be somehow effective to put the price under control.
All right, thank you very much for analysis and insights. Mr. Vincent Mo joining us here in the studio. And that does it for this edition of Dialogue. Thank you for watching, and bye for now.